6 days ago, February 21st, 58 years ago, in 1965, at the Audubon Ballroom, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, known by many as Malcolm X, was assassinated. In attendance at that event on that day was Dr. Betty Shabazz. She had brought with her their 4 young daughters, and she was pregnant at the time with a 5th daughter. Malcolm had just entered onto the stage. An argument ensued. Comment, "Get your hand out of my pocket." Men ran up to the stage and began firing at Brother Malcolm, and he was killed immediately. The late Baba Dick Gregory stated that when they did the autopsy on Malcolm, they found that the entry of the bullets were coming downward. They were not coming upward, meaning that the gunmen who had ran to the stage were pointing their weapons upward at Malcolm, firing at him. But when they did the autopsy on his body, the bullets, the entryway of the bullets were coming downward into his body. He asserted that the men who were blamed, accused, who were firing the weapons, firing the bullets at Malcolm in the Audubon Ballroom during that day, that they had blanks. They did not have real bullets, and that there was a deliberate attempt, not just attempt, but a deliberate act to have Malcolm X assassinated. Brother Heath L., Griot's Corner, back to Black Classic Film Review. Probably reviewing today one of the most important films of my generation. Came out in 1992, directed by Spike Lee, entitled, of course, Malcolm X. Interestingly, during that time, there was another movie that had come out entitled Deep Cover, starring Lawrence Fishburne. And at the time, Lawrence Fishburne was still rather youthful looking. He was slim. After watching his performance on film, I said to myself, he has the complexion of Brother Malcolm. He looked like he had the stature, and he could really capture Brother Malcolm. I thought that Lawrence Fishburne should have been considered for the title role of Malcolm X in the movie. That was all cast aside when I went to the theater back in 1992, sat down, and was blown away by the performance of Denzel Washington in the lead role as Malcolm X. Just need to get this out the way before we go into the reviewing of this film. The Academy Award snubbed Denzel Washington on him receiving the Oscar for his performance as Brother Malcolm. In my opinion, and this is not a slight against the Academy, but I believe that it wasn't Denzel's performance that was the reason that he was not selected for the Oscar. But I contend that it was the fear, still, the ignorance of their misunderstanding of who Malcolm X truly was. That was the precipitous reason for them not offering Denzel Washington the Academy Award. I take nothing away from what Denzel did, the performance he did in Training Day, where he did receive the Oscar for that. But clearly, anyone who knows anything about character development, character performance, and acting, his role, his performance as Malcolm X was incredibly phenomenal. And so I just wanted to get that out the way before going into this film review. Denzel should have gotten the Oscar for his performance in Malcolm X. This movie was incredible. It chronicled his early life, Malcolm's early life, his father, who was Reverend Little, who was a Baptist minister, but who was also a Garveyite, who believed in self-awareness and self-reliance. He believed in the Black man and women reclaiming their African identity. White men in their community killed his father. His mother, upon the family having to go on welfare, his mother had a mental breakdown. And Malcolm and his siblings were put into foster care. Malcolm still excelled as a young boy. It chronicled this. He excelled dramatically in school, academically. And when he was asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, young Malcolm X said he wanted to be a lawyer. But the racist white teacher that he had told him that he should consider a laborer's position, and he should not set his sights on something as aspiring as being a lawyer. It went through his life, how he got into running numbers, being out there in the streets. He became an addict. His life was really going in a very different route until he was incarcerated. And it chronicled him being exposed to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, and it chronicled him accepting that as a part of his life, coming into the nation, rising up in the ranks, becoming the national spokesman. It chronicled everything. If you've ever studied anything about Malcolm X's life, if you've ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley, you will see the course of events that took place in his life, ultimately leading to the breakup or the breakaway from the Nation of Islam, and him going out on his own, him going to Mecca and going into Egypt, that ultimately ended up in his assassination. There were some poignant, memorable performances in this movie that really stand out. Have to give credit to the other actors who were in this movie with Denzel Washington, Angela Bassett as Dr. Betty Shabazz, Delroy Lindo as West Indian Archie. How could we ever forget that profound performance? Albert Hall, who played Baines, of course, and Baines was not a real character. This was a character that Spike Lee developed and placed in the film. Baines was a fictional character, but his performance, Albert Hall, was tremendous. Teresa Randall, Ossie Davis, who did the eulogy at the end of the movie, Lynette McKee, who played Louise Little, Malcolm's mother, Al Freeman Jr., the late Al Freeman Jr. as Elijah Muhammad. And I have to say, I have seen performances or actors portraying Elijah Muhammad. In fact, when they did the Ali movie, Albert Hall, who played Baines, portrayed Elijah Muhammad in the Ali movie. It was not a wise choice for that to have been done. There has been no performer, in my humble opinion, who has captured Elijah Muhammad the way that Al Freeman Jr. did in Malcolm X. James McDaniel, Ernest Lee Thomas, Jean-Claude Lamar. There were so many who were profoundly an integral part in the performance and in the scenes of this movie that it just really takes you back. It really takes you back. My favorite scene in this movie, and many of you may remember, those of you who have seen the movie, is when Malcolm meets Elijah Muhammad for the first time. And they lead him to Elijah Muhammad's office and they open the door. And Malcolm, of course, Denzel portraying Malcolm, walks in the door, head bowed, never says a word, but he is so deeply moved and humbled to be in the presence of Elijah Muhammad, he just starts tearing up. And of course, Al Freeman Jr., who's portraying Elijah Muhammad, tells him, "You used to be a thief, and a hustler and an addict. And he said, when Satan went before God and said, and God offered Job, and he says, yes, Job is a holy man because you've kept a hedge around him. But if you take the hedge from around him, he won't remain faithful. And he says to Malcolm, the hedge has been removed from you, Malcolm, and I believe that you will be faithful. And that scene where Denzel is just weeping, I mean, tears are just flowing, and he never says a word. He just says, yes, sir. He never really utters anything. That was probably, in my humble opinion, the most poignant scene in Malcolm X. This movie, chronicling the life of Malcolm X, was instrumental on so many fronts because those in my generation, I had just graduated from college in 1990. So, and it was during that period where there was a resurgence of Black consciousness, African consciousness that came in my generation. And in fact, that was when the group X Clan came out. Public Enemy, of course, did the title track to the Malcolm X movie, Fight the Power. And there was a resurgence of conscious awareness that arose within the young Black community. So as a young adult, I was impacted by that as well. And so this was sort of an opportunity for us to embrace who we regard as heroes. Malcolm X, of course, was a contemporary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is a blessed favorite of mine personally, but Malcolm presented the other approach, the other side. He wasn't a man who advocated violence, yet he was a man who said that if somebody puts their hand on you, then you make sure that they get their hands off of you. It was according to Brother Malcolm, it was a common sense response to when someone is attacking you. You do what you need to do to defend yourself. Ultimately, Malcolm's character, personality throughout his life, coming from being out there in the streets to coming into the Nation of Islam and then evolving from the Nation of Islam into a greater awareness of looking at capturing and understanding the nature of the character of a man, as opposed to judging him primarily or strictly by the color of his skin. And that was something that is a part of who Malcolm X was, and dare I say, who Malcolm X is, for those of us who were willing to lay aside what others were saying about Malcolm and getting an opportunity to look at and examine the complicated nature of who Malcolm X was, because he went through so many transitions in his life before his untimely death. Recently, one of Malcolm X's daughters is now pursuing legalities against the CIA, the FBI, and others, the New York City Police Department, I believe, as well, surrounding the nature of Brother Malcolm's death. I wonder if it will come up that when they did the autopsy about the entryway of the bullets inside of Brother Malcolm, if that will come up as well. With this being, well, that's coming to the official close. And I say official because those of us who are Black people, we don't stop celebrating Black history when March 1st comes. But I thought it was important to lift up this film. Again, being 6 days away from 6 days, 58 years ago, of the cowardly, and I say that without hesitation, the cowardly and precipitous assassination of Malcolm X. His life, what he gave, what he tried to do to uplift his community. He considered himself to be a part of what we referred to then as the Negro community, He did what he thought was necessary to uplift us as a people and ultimately as a nation outside of the Black race, as a nation. This story of Malcolm X is not just Black history. His story, King's story, others who have given to the upliftment and the development, the maturation of Black people in this country. This is a part of American history. And so let it not be assumed that simply because this movie was made by Spike Lee, it was being addressing a Black leader, if you will, Black civil rights leader. His life and his legacy is a part of America's history, as complicated as America's history is. So if you have not watched this film in a long time, let me encourage you, brothers and sisters, to pull it out again. Let's go through this process again of connecting to and relating with this beautiful icon of our history. We salute, we honor, we celebrate who Malcolm X was, and we strive to make sure that what he left, what he gave, his story will never, ever fall on deaf ears. This is Brother Heath L., Griot's Corner, back to Black Classic Film Review. We'll be coming back in the future with more reviews and hope that you stay tuned. Thank you for watching. As always, peace and blessings.